2 years ago, and I've struggled ever when Dad died. I was living in Bismarck, and that was a tough deal. And I went back to Bismarck and never really got into drinking much. Being a hillbilly, all them town kids were doing their thing, and we just snowmobiled. Jeff Solon and Larry Krogan and I, and Larry Rowland, we were on our snowmobiles and, you know, crashing into trees and running trap lines down at the shop, fixing up our old trucks. And so I never really got it. I never knew much about drinking, and I toured with Up With People for a year. I started drinking after Dad died, and it didn't take me too bad. But that year I toured with Up With People, and I remember being down in Arizona, and you know, first time out of North Dakota, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, it's not snowing out, it's January. And we went to play pool, and these guys were drinking Jack Daniels of all things, and I didn't know what that was. The next thing you know, oh, you gotta try this, and oh boy, it was good. And I went on a little journey for a number of years with Jack Daniels, and those of you may remember back in 1988, a certain David Ronning got married for 6 weeks. And that was a mistake, but it got me into treatment. And I stayed clean and sober for 5.5 years. And was living in Florida. I had a good career going, and my girlfriend and I split up, and I was going to AA. And Bonnie, it just wasn't happening. And I was supposed to go to a noon AA meeting, and she had some rum under the sink, and I just said, and so for 9 years, I struggled once again with drinking. And what I've learned is that the devil really preys on preachers' kids and people of great faith. So I've had 15 treatment centers my whole life, and 2 years ago, I moved down to Iowa from a treatment center and a halfway house. I thought, well, this would be a good place to start over. I always wanted to move back home, but the thought of being up here in the middle of winter and Kirsten's downtown, I just didn't dare. So I was at a party, and this little pipe came around. Try it, you'll like it, David. They called me Cowboy because I didn't wear cowboy hats too much out here, but I worked on a ranch out in Colorado, and I kind of got into the whole, I've always been a cowboy at heart. I think my dad was too. He just didn't like cowboy boots. But I don't know if he'd ever wear a hat, but anyway, this thing went around, and, oh, Cowboy, you're going to like this. I was up in Minneapolis. It was a meth pipe. I didn't know what it was. A little pipe. It looked kind of cute. And put a flame on it, and all this little smoke come around. And it was fascinating. I took a hit of it, and I was like, holy smokes. And it's a very addictive, powerful drug. And from one hit, within a month, I was an IV drug user. And for a while, I had about $150, $200 a habit. And I moved up to Minneapolis, living in it wasn't a drug house, but there were drugs there. It was a nice house. But I picked up HIV. And here I am, little David Ronning, used to sing in the Lakeside Christian Center, playing guitar at 40 below in the chapel, disappearing on Mom for 10 days. She didn't know where I was. And lying and cheating, and I think the worst thing that I did was that's family business. We'll keep it family. But I was gone for 10 days, and they call it a run when you're up for 10 days. It's a 10-day run. And I was up for 10 days, maybe had a couple of little winks of sleep, didn't eat. I came back to Iowa. I still had my house, and was I working? Did I still have my job? Yeah, I think so, because I told my employer that I was HIV positive. I thought, well, if I get cut, he gets cut. You know, it's not a good deal. I didn't know much about it, and then he terminated me, which was not right to do, but had a string of bad luck. And that set me off the edge, losing my job. And I got my needles out. Next thing I know, I'm in bed, and I'm not in a good way. And I just hear this voice, and I remember kind of just like I was shaking, and underneath 4 quilts, and the voice said, "David, call your mother." And so I remember it took me 3 different times dialing the phone, and finally I called Mom. And then after I hung up, Mom's not going to know what to do. So I called 911, and the paramedics got there before Mom did. And so here's her son on the gurney, needle tracks from his wrist to his shoulders. And mom knew I was an alcoholic, but never knew about this. And so the sheriff in town, who's a good friend of mom's like, "What's going on here?" "Oh, your son's," and there was needles on the floor. "Your son's a meth addict, an IV meth addict." So that was mom's first introduction to her son being taken away by the devil. And mom, unfortunately, had to watch 2 overdoses, and I bled all over a carpet. And I just did not. And there were so many nights when, and I used in mom's house. She didn't know it. And I went out to my truck, and I've still got a suicide note in my truck. Every time I use meth, I'd write a suicide note in case she'd come home and find me dead. And finally, at Christmas time, went up to cities to see Mary. And mother was planning on coming up the nights of Christmas, and I was thinking about coming with her. But once I got in the cities, and I ended up over at this drug house, and just gonna stop in and give him a Christmas card, yeah. And ended up missing Christmas. And 3 in the morning on Christmas, and I knew I had to face mom and everyone. And I said, "God, I just want to die." And I was out of money. They wouldn't give me more drugs, but that was God watching me. But at the time, I was kind of upset about it. And I'm sitting in this house, 10 below, and I look out the window, and I see Jimbo Platson, Gene's son. And clear as bell, and I'm like, "Jimbo, you're dead." And he said, "No, I'm not. Get out of there. Go home." So I think, well, no big deal. So I get out and I sit in my truck, and I just wanted to die. I didn't want to face mom, so I ended up over at Mary's house. And
you weren't welcome there at the time?
No. And I stood up outside of Mary's house. I didn't know where else to go. And Mary sent her husband out to see if I was still alive. And I went in the house, and Nathan came up and hugged me, the 4-year-old, and he said, "David, I love you." And I went, and Mary said, "Go take a shower, we'll figure this out." So I went back to Iowa while mom was up, and I got on my knees and I said, "God, of great mercy, God of the Christian Center, God of Camp Menegoshi, I'm your special child, show me a way out." And God started talking to me. A few weeks went by, and a little bit of time went by, and I thought, I should call Gene and tell her this very interesting story. So I tried to call Gene a couple times, didn't get her. One morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, I got a hold of Gene, and I said, "Gene, I got to tell you this very interesting story." Turns out that the day I called her was Jimbo's 5th anniversary of his death. And then I realized that God sent me an angel. Jimbo Platson, his glasses were crooked, his beard was all scruffy, and David, I don't think he had a cigarette. I don't know if they smoke in heaven or not, but so ever since then, and then God said, "Come back home," and he's asking me to sing, to share my story. And I'll tell you what, sitting up here at the Christian Center, all those years we stood up there as little kids, but I don't have any shame about it, because God brings us through, and God puts us through tough things. He puts the specialists through the toughest. And I know that, so it's been fun, and the devil no longer has control over me, and it's really beautiful. And I've learned a lot about the devil, and he's real. He's the ruler of this world, and it's hard, being Lutheran, but I've learned a lot about it. So from the moment I wake up in the morning, I say, "God, here I am. I'm your son. I'm your cowboy, and we're going to kick the devil's butt today. Where do you want me to go?" And some days he tells me to go here, some days, and the assignments are getting bigger. And this song came out, and I've been working on it all summer. And one night last week, or 2.5 weeks ago, he said, "David, go to the Christian Center and get this song recorded." Okay. So I went to the Christian Center, and I sat over there. It was a beautiful night. It was one of those full harvest moons. And I came in, the coyotes were howling. So I sat down and said, "Well, let's record this song." And I just did it. And I said, "God, what am I going to do with it now?" And he says, "Just wait." So next morning, we've been having fun. Mother and I started an email prayer chain, and we're just learning the great power of prayer. It's just, when we come in agreement, come together with prayer concerns. If anyone's interested in using because my computer, all I used to use it for was finding drugs. And now, from the moment it gets turned on, it's to glorify God and to help people. And so as I'm sitting at my desk at about 4, God wakes me up very early in the morning. And I feel like I should be going milking cows or something. I mean, what do you do at 5 in the morning? But I can't cut wood. And so I sit there and I pray and I read my Bible. And so I'm sitting there and the cats are playing around and I've got a Copenhagen out, got a nice cold Diet Coke. It's a good morning. All of a sudden, Garth Brooks falls off. The CD falls on the floor. Well, I looked at it and I looked up Garth Brooks' address and I sent him a copy of Sweet Jesus. Now, I don't see Garth here. Is Garth here? I don't know much about Nashville, but I do know this. That's a real powerful song. And I'm singing it wherever I go. And Michael and I prayed about this song, and I asked prayers because if God wants me to sing it, I'm loving singing it here. But if He wants me to sing it in a larger place, that He'll just provide that. So what a gift it is to be a Ronning, to be back, and not afraid or ashamed to share my story.